My name is Emily Carter, and I used to believe some people were just born to be better than others. Not because it was true, but because someone convinced me of that. Her name was Rachel Monroe, and for most of my life, she made sure I knew I would never reach her level. At least, that's what she wanted me to believe. I met Rachel during my sophomore year at Columbia. We were both journalism majors, both ambitious, both driven, and both competing for the same prestigious internship at the Manhattan Herald. She was the kind of girl who walked into a room like she owned the air inside it. Polished, articulate, camera-ready, and always ahead. I was different. I came from a small town in Vermont, raised by a single mom who worked 2 jobs. I didn't wear designer heels. I didn't know the right people. I wasn't polished. I was raw, nervous, and too eager. But I had heart. And talent. At least I hoped I did. The first time Rachel ever really noticed me was when I beat her to a front-page editorial in our college paper. It was about urban gentrification, something I experienced firsthand growing up. It wasn't just reporting, it was personal. When the editor chose mine over hers, she smiled at me in front of everyone and said, "Cute story, Em. But don't get used to it. You'll never be as good as me." She said it softly, almost sweetly, like it was a fact, like she was doing me a favor. From that moment on, I lived in her shadow. Every presentation, every pitch, every classroom debate, she found a way to outshine me. And when she couldn't, she made sure everyone believed she did. But the first real sign that something was off came years later. It had been 6 years since graduation. I hadn't seen Rachel since our final year, and truthfully, I didn't care to. After college, she landed her dream job at NYC Weekly almost instantly. All thanks to her father's connections and her relentless charm. I, on the other hand, spent months freelancing, pitching articles no one read, working part-time at a bookstore to make rent. Eventually, I found my footing. I moved to Seattle, started writing for a small but rising online magazine called Bold Type, and poured my soul into investigative journalism. My work was quieter, but it mattered. I built a name for myself in the industry slowly, not with flash, but with substance. Then one Tuesday morning, I got an unexpected email. It was from Rachel. Subject line: "Hey stranger." My heart skipped. I hadn't heard from her in years. The email was short, just a few lines. "Hey Em. Long time no talk. Was wondering if you're going to be at the Pacific Northwest Press Conference next month? Would love to catch up." I stared at it for a full minute. Rachel Monroe reaching out to me? Just months earlier, I had published an exposé that gained national attention. A piece on corporate cover-ups involving a major pharmaceutical company. It was raw, controversial, and earned me an award nomination. Could that be why she was suddenly interested? Still, I ignored the feeling. Maybe she'd changed. Maybe this was just old classmates reconnecting. I replied casually, saying I might attend. She replied even faster this time. "Great. I'm on a panel this year. Would love to chat before the event. I have an idea I'd love to run by you." Her tone was unusually warm, almost deferential. That was the first red flag. Rachel didn't run ideas by people. Rachel led, and others followed. But I brushed it off. I even felt flattered. 2 weeks later, I saw her again in person at the conference. She looked exactly the same. Flawless makeup, fitted white blazer, gold watch that probably cost more than my rent. But there was something different in her eyes this time. Not arrogance. Not pride. Desperation. We hugged, exchanged polite laughs, and sat down for coffee in the hotel lobby. She made small talk, complimented my recent work, which shocked me, and finally leaned in. "I actually wanted to ask you something, career-related," she said, lowering her voice. "I'm kind of going through something right now." I blinked. "Okay, what's going on?" And that's when she dropped the first clue. She said her job at NYC Weekly was on thin ice. Management had changed. The readership was tanking. Her editor had been replaced by someone young and woke. Her words, not mine, and she felt like she didn't fit the culture anymore. She sipped her latte and looked at me, her voice cracking just slightly. "Honestly, I think I'm done in print journalism." I waited for the twist. Then she smiled, as if it had all been part of a master plan. But that's why I wanted to talk to you. I have this big idea. A podcast. Investigative storytelling. Kind of like what you've been doing. And I think we should partner up. I froze. My mind drifted back to college. To that smile. To her words. You'll never be as good as me. Now here she was, pitching me like I was her golden ticket. Like none of that had ever happened. I tried to keep my expression neutral. Professional. But something inside me stirred. Not anger. Not revenge. Something colder. Clarity. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a reconnection. This was a power shift. And she knew it. Still, I didn't respond right away. I told her I'd think about it. She nodded a little too eagerly. The same girl who once mocked my every move was now sitting across from me, hoping I'd throw her a lifeline. As I walked away from that meeting, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my agent. Congrats. Just heard from the team. You're officially on the shortlist for the National Investigative Journalism Award. Press release goes out tonight. I stood there in the hotel hallway, holding my phone, heart pounding. Rachel's words from years ago echoed in my head. You'll never be as good as me. And yet here I was. It started with whispers. Not the literal kind, but those faint, emotional murmurs that brush against your soul when something isn't quite right. At first, I chalked it up to coincidence. The random text from Marissa after almost a year of silence. A vague, "Hey, how have you been?" Like we were casual acquaintances catching up, not bitter rivals whose last words were flung like daggers across a battlefield of ambition. For context, Marissa was the golden girl. At least, that's how she branded herself back then. Always ahead. Always flawless. Always loud about it. She had no problem reminding me I was a few steps behind, financially, professionally, socially. "You're trying, I'll give you that," she once said with a tight-lipped smile. "But you'll never quite catch up. It's just not in your nature." And like a fool, I let those words get under my skin for years. But now, after that message, something shifted. I didn't reply right away. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. I stared at her name on the screen like it was a ghost. A beautifully curated ghost in perfect lipstick, manicured to precision, still haunting my self-worth. Why now? The suspicion started there. Then, 2 days later, I got a LinkedIn notification. Marissa had viewed my profile. Again. Twice in 1 week. Suddenly, it didn't feel like a casual check-in. It felt calculated. A week later, I was invited to a charity networking event. I wasn't going to go. It didn't seem like my scene, but my assistant insisted. Said the sponsors were people I'd want to meet, and it would look good for the company if I showed my face. I arrived in a black jumpsuit, minimal makeup, and a confidence I hadn't worn in years. There was a time I'd enter rooms hoping not to be seen. Now I stepped in knowing someone would always be watching. 15 minutes in, my eyes met hers across the room. Marissa. Same expensive posture, same air of importance, but there was something different in her face. Something that cracked through the polished mask. A flicker of worry. Maybe even regret. She saw me and froze. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just held her gaze for a second too long before turning away. I mingled. I networked. I collected cards and made promises to follow up. Meanwhile, she lingered on the edges of every group I passed, just outside of earshot, like she wanted to speak, but didn't know how. Later that night, I opened Instagram and saw that she had liked 2 of my recent posts. One was a photo from a panel I'd spoken on. The other was an old throwback of me in college, smiling at the camera with an expression that had long faded by the time I met her. The likes weren't the problem. It was the comment. "You've come so far, sparkling heart." Far from what? From being her shadow? From being the person she once publicly pitted? Something didn't add up. By now, the pattern was undeniable. I started analyzing everything. Every past conversation. Every microaggression I used to ignore. Every subtle put-down that had been camouflaged as friendly advice. And now she was acting nice? It wasn't like her. Marissa wasn't the type to hand out praise unless she needed something. And I was right. That night, at exactly 2:14 a.m., I got another message. Hey, random Q, are you still connected to the venture capital guy from Silver and Holt? And there it was. The reason. The motive behind the sudden revival of contact. She needed access. What she didn't know was, I was no longer just connected to the VC from Silver and Holt. I was one of the firm's newest advisors. But I didn't tell her that. Instead, I replied in the morning with a calm, detached.
Yeah, why?
No emoji. No warmth. Just enough curiosity to keep her on the hook. Her answer came fast. Long story, LOL. My startup hit a snag, and we're doing another funding round.
Thought I'd check if you could intro me or something.
Would mean a lot. That's when the suspicion transformed into confirmation. She wasn't just reaching out to catch up. She was cornered, and she thought I could be her way out. I felt a twinge of something. Was it satisfaction?
No.
Not yet. Something colder. Like watching the tide shift from the shore and knowing the waves were finally rolling in your favor.
But it wasn't just the ask.
It was the tone. Marissa, the same woman who once told me, to my face, that I'd never have what it takes to lead, was now hinting that she needed my help to stay afloat. My heart should have raced. It didn't. Instead, I felt detached. Clinical. Like a doctor observing a patient who had spent years refusing treatment, now begging for a cure. I began digging. Her startup, which had once made headlines for its innovative sustainability model, had recently laid off 30% of its team. One of their biggest partners had quietly pulled out. The cracks were forming, and Marissa was using every connection she had to glue them back together. I was on that list, not because we were friends, but because now I was useful. And that's what stung the most, not that she needed me, but that it had taken her downfall to see my value. Still, I didn't reject her outright. I needed to know more. So, I invited her to coffee. It wasn't revenge. It was research. We met at a boutique cafe in Midtown. The kind of place that served drinks with edible flowers and oat milk as a default. She arrived late, flustered, and overly cheerful. Her hug was too tight. Her compliments were too generous. Her eyes didn't match her smile. I let her talk. Let her pitch her startup, explain the hiccups, make jokes about how tough the economy is these days. But she never acknowledged the past. Not once. No, sorry. No, I was wrong. Not even a casual admission of what she used to say to me. She still spoke like I owed her kindness for the years of cruelty. And that's when the full suspicion cemented itself in my bones. She didn't change.
She just needed something.
And I was the only one left to ask. By the end of the meeting, she made her real request. Think you could connect me with anyone at Silver and Holt? Even just an intro? You're so well-respected now, it would really help us. There it was. The moment I had imagined, over and over again, in the quiet corners of my old apartment when her voice still haunted me. But when it actually happened, I didn't feel powerful. I felt tired. Because no amount of success can undo the years of being told you're worthless. And no amount of groveling can heal the wounds inflicted by someone who once relished your struggle. Still, I smiled. Let me think about it. I paid the bill. And as I walked away from that cafe, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something deeper. The beginning of a reckoning. And I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the start of her unraveling. I wasn't sure what pulled me into that bookstore that day. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was fate. The windows fogged slightly with humidity as I stepped inside. It smelled like old paper and lavender tea. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just wandering, but that's when I saw her. Amber. There she was, sitting behind a small card table labeled Meet the Author. My breath hitched. It wasn't the polished, untouchable Amber I remembered from college. The one who always walked into a room as if it were built just for her. No, this Amber looked tired. Her makeup was barely concealing the fatigue beneath her eyes. Her once blonde highlights had faded, but it was definitely her. The woman who told me, to my face, "You'll never be as good as me, sweetheart." Now she was hawking self-published romance novels in the back corner of a barely trafficked bookstore. I didn't approach. Not right away. I watched.
Observed.
She was trying to be charming to a woman with a stroller, but the woman wasn't interested and walked away mid-sentence. Amber laughed awkwardly and looked down at the table, embarrassed. It hit me then. I wasn't just doing better. I had become what she always feared I might. Someone who made it without her. The memory of the last time we spoke came rushing back. It was the final week of college. She had cornered me after class, furious that our professor had chosen my final project for the showcase. "You copied me," she'd hissed. "I didn't," I'd said quietly. "He said mine was more original. More vulnerable."
She scoffed.
"He's just pitying you. You'll never be able to stand out without someone helping you along. People like you don't win without clinging to someone like me." That night, I went back to my dorm and cried. Not because I believed her, but because some small, insecure part of me almost did. Almost. Now, years later, I stood in a position I'd only dreamed of then. I had a successful PR agency, a fast-growing client list, and a feature in a top industry magazine coming next month. And she was here, selling books that nobody was stopping to buy. A woman approached her table. I tensed. Was she going to buy a copy? Ask for a signing?
No.
She was just looking for directions to the restroom. Amber smiled through it. That fake, strained smile I remembered from our group projects, back when she'd hog all the credit, but none of the work. She looked up for a second, and her eyes met mine. Time paused. At first, there was a flicker of recognition. Then, disbelief. Then, something I hadn't expected. Relief. She stood up slowly, the corners of her lips twitching into a small, uncertain smile. "Is that?" I didn't move. I wanted her to say my name. "Danny," she said finally, voice cautious. I nodded. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It's really you." We sat in the back cafe area of the bookstore, sipping on overpriced lattes. She was trying to play it cool, but her voice betrayed her nerves. "You look incredible," she said, eyes darting to my designer coat, my sleek laptop bag, the phone that kept buzzing from clients needing last-minute approvals. "I've been following your work," she added quickly. "The PR firm. Your feature in Influence Quarterly? That was amazing." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know you read that magazine." She laughed lightly. "Well, I started recently. You've kind of been everywhere." There was silence for a moment. Then she said the one thing I didn't expect. "I was wondering if you'd ever consider helping me." I blinked. "With what?" "My book. My brand." She leaned in, voice dropping. "I know I messed up back then. I was insecure. Competitive. You were always better than me, Danny. I just didn't want to see it." There it was. The moment I'd imagined over and over on sleepless nights, in therapy sessions, in car rides alone with my thoughts. The moment where she would finally admit it. "You told me I'd never be as good as you," I said evenly. "I know," she replied. "And I was wrong. So wrong." A lump caught in my throat. She looked at me with those once piercing eyes, now softer, humbled. "I can't do this alone. My publisher dropped me last year. My social media following is dying. I've lost almost everything. I need a strategist. Someone who can rebrand me. And, well, no one does that better than you." My fingers curled around the mug tightly. The tables had turned so drastically I could barely process it. I wanted to revel in it, to lean back and smirk like she used to. But instead, I just looked at her. And for a moment, I didn't see the girl who'd humiliated me. I saw a woman crumbling under the weight of her own ego, desperately searching for a lifeline. "Why me?" I asked. She smiled weakly. "Because I know you're the only one who's good enough to fix what I broke." The words hit harder than I expected. I nodded slowly. "Let me think about it."
And I left.
That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, haunted by two conflicting voices in my head. Voice 1. She used you. She mocked you. Let her fall. Voice 2. This is your power now. You can choose to rise above it all. I paced the floor of my apartment, staring out the window at the glittering skyline. Success had never felt so complicated. I opened my old college folder, tucked away in a bottom drawer. Inside were printouts of our group project evaluations. Hers were always glowing, until the final one. That one had been mine. The one where the professor had written, "Danny's voice is raw and real. She doesn't try to be anyone else. She simply shows up." And that's what makes her unforgettable. I held that paper for a long time. I remembered the tears I cried after that showcase. Not because I was sad. Because I had finally felt seen. Amber never gave me that. But now, she was the one begging to be seen again. The next morning, I opened my laptop and drafted a short email. Subject line: regarding your request. Amber, after reflecting on our conversation, I've decided I'm open to discussing how I might support your brand revival. However, I work on contract, not favors. And I don't accept clients who are looking for shortcuts or illusions. If you're serious about doing the hard work and respecting the boundaries you once mocked, we can talk. Let me know.
Danny.
I stared at the message for a while, then hit send. Hours passed. I got through 2 client calls, 1 photo shoot, and a meeting before I checked my email again. There it was. Her reply: Danny, thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me. I'm ready to do the work. For real this time. Amber. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt complete. For so long, I had been defined by the shadow she cast over me. But now I realized I had created my own light. And it was blinding. I wasn't expecting to run into her. Not there. Not in that state. It was a networking event for top executives, glass walls, expensive suits, and too many people pretending to enjoy lukewarm wine. I had come reluctantly, mostly because my team insisted I needed to show face. I had just stepped off stage after delivering a keynote about leadership through adversity when I saw her by the bar. She looked out of place. Her shoulders were hunched. Her once perfect hair now dry and brittle. Her smile forced. But her eyes caught mine, and in that moment, the illusion shattered. She recognized me instantly. Her posture straightened. Her mouth opened slightly, maybe to speak, maybe to apologize, but nothing came out. I approached slowly, not out of anger, but out of curiosity. "Emily," I said, calm and even. She blinked fast. "Oh my God, I didn't know you'd be here." "I'm on the speaker list," I replied flatly, raising an eyebrow. "And you?" Her lips twitched. "Just attending. Things have been a bit different lately."
Different.
That was one word for it. I decided not to let her off the hook so easily. "So, what are you doing now?" "Still with Delco." I already knew the answer. She looked down into her glass.
No.
"I was laid off 6 months ago. Budget cuts, they said. And the job market has been difficult."
Ah.
There it was. The same woman who once stood in front of our entire department and compared my work to a student's draft, who laughed at the very idea that I'd ever be promoted above entry level, now unemployed, humbled, and clearly struggling. I gave a small nod. "I see." She shifted uncomfortably. "I actually saw your company in the news last month. You're doing big things."
I
didn't realize it was you."
Lies.
She had realized. They always do. The ones who doubted you always watch from the shadows, waiting to see you fall. But when you rise instead, that's when their silence turns to desperation. "What is it you need, Emily?" I asked direct. She hesitated, her pride warring with her panic. "I was wondering if you had any openings. I know I'm a bit overqualified for most roles, but I'm open to contributing in any way I can." It hung there, heavy, humiliating. I could see the shame in her eyes. The woman who once told me, "You'll never have what it takes to lead," now asking for a chance.
From me. I wanted to walk away.
Every atom in my body screamed for it, to let her stew in the consequences of her arrogance. But something deeper held me there, an old ache that hadn't fully healed. "You remember when you told me I'd never be as good as you?" I said, keeping my voice even. She winced. I was wrong. "I know." Silence wrapped around us. Then she said something that made the moment tilt sideways. "I was jealous of you," she whispered. You had something I didn't.
Drive. Grit.
And people liked you, genuinely liked you. I thought putting you down would help me keep my place. But it didn't. It just made me bitter. That cracked something in me. I hadn't expected honesty. Not from her.
Not now.
I don't know what to say, she continued, her voice shaking. I burned every bridge I had. You're the only one who might still see me as more than a mistake. The bar noise faded. I saw her clearly now, not as the powerful gatekeeper she once was, but as a woman who made the wrong bet on pride over integrity. And still, part of me wanted to say no, to let her fall. But another part, the one that had once needed a chance herself, held me back. I exhaled. Send me your resume, I said finally. If something comes up that fits, I'll let you know. Her eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I didn't expect. I'm not doing it for you, I interrupted. I'm doing it because I remember what it felt like to be underestimated. I won't be that person. Not even to you. She nodded, swallowing hard. I understand. As I turned to walk away, she whispered, I'm sorry. I didn't stop walking. I didn't say anything else. But in my chest, something shifted. The past had bent to the present. And I had finally won, not with revenge, but with power she could never take back. I stared at her message, rereading it like I might have misunderstood. But there it was, clear, pitiful, and laced with desperation.
Please.
I don't know who else to turn to. I need your help. The woman who once stood like a queen over my life, now she was on her knees, metaphorically, reaching out to the girl she tried so hard to destroy. I didn't reply right away. I couldn't. The silence in my apartment was thick, heavy with ghosts. My mind wandered back to the countless nights I cried because of her. The cutting remarks. The subtle digs masked as advice. The way she'd smile whenever I failed, as though my pain confirmed her superiority. You're just not on my level, sweetie. I could still hear her voice like it was etched into the walls. But now the power had shifted. Somehow, life had twisted its axis and tilted the light in my favor. She wasn't the golden girl anymore, I was. And yet, instead of feeling triumphant, I felt hollow. A strange unease curled in my stomach. Was this victory? If so, why didn't it taste sweeter? The day she walked into my office was the beginning of the unraveling. She didn't recognize me at first. I had changed clothes, confidence, even my name was on the door. But I recognized her instantly. Same sharp features. Same practiced poise. But there was a crack in her expression. A nervous edge to her smile. She introduced herself like we were strangers. I played along. I wanted to see how long she could fake it. She was applying for a grant, the kind of opportunity she used to mock me for even dreaming of. And here she was, dressed in borrowed dignity, asking for a seat at my table. She hadn't come to the meeting expecting to beg. But when I flipped through her proposal and asked tough questions, her confidence began to wilt. Her voice trembled. She stammered. Her eyes darted around the room. And then it happened, recognition. A flicker of memory crossed her face like a shadow. She finally looked at me, not through me. Wait, your name. Your. I raised my hand gently. Let's stay focused on the proposal, shall we? That was the first blow. I saw her flinch. But I wasn't done. After that meeting, she tried every avenue, emails, calls, even reaching out to mutual connections. She was desperate. Her company was on the verge of collapse, and she needed the funding badly. Each attempt was more frantic than the last. But I didn't respond. I wasn't punishing her. At least, that's what I told myself. I just needed time to process what it all meant.
Why now?
Why me? And beneath those questions, a darker one lurked. Was I becoming like her? She had once used silence to crush me. Was I doing the same? But my silence wasn't rooted in cruelty. It was rooted in survival. I needed to protect the scar tissue she'd left behind. On a gray, quiet evening, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but something told me it was time. Her voice was faint, almost a whisper. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but please, just hear me out. I didn't say anything. I messed up, she continued, her voice breaking. I burned bridges. I thought I was untouchable. And when I saw your name, I felt ashamed. That word, ashamed, landed like a rock in my chest. She wasn't crying yet, but her voice wobbled like someone on the edge of a cliff. You have no reason to help me. I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. Silence stretched between us. And then I asked the question I'd rehearsed in my mind for years. Why did you do it? There was a long pause.
Finally, she sighed.
Because I saw something in you I couldn't accept. You reminded me of who I used to be before I lost myself trying to be better than everyone else. I thought if I pushed you down, I'd feel taller. She wasn't lying. That was the worst part. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, staring at the city lights through my window. Help her? Ignore her? Ruin her completely? I thought of the younger me, heartbroken, insecure, trying so hard to impress someone who only ever wanted to see me fail. She didn't need revenge. She needed closure. And I wasn't that girl anymore. The next day, I reviewed her proposal again. Objectively, it had potential. The kind of potential I would support if I didn't know her. The kind of potential I would nurture, not sabotage. I signed the approval document. With no note. No, I told you so. Just quiet grace. I didn't do it for her. I did it for myself. Because healing, real healing, isn't about watching someone crawl. It's about choosing not to become them. Weeks later, I passed her in the building lobby. She was walking with a little more dignity now, perhaps surprised by the outcome. She paused, looking unsure whether to approach me. I don't know how to thank you, she said softly. I looked her in the eye and simply said, You don't have to. She smiled faintly, nodded, and walked away. And as I stood there, watching her silhouette shrink in the distance, I realized the final twist of it all wasn't that she needed me now. It was that I didn't need anything from her anymore. Final chilling sentence. For the first time, her voice no longer echoed in my head, and in that silence, I finally found peace.